This is Wakia Washte. That means greetings in Lakota, as Wakia means thunder. So this is Wakia Gilbert. Here I am again. I don't know how I could ever top that last video I did. Sometimes I watch my own videos and get more out of them than maybe other people do. It's almost a cathartic experience. It is a cathartic experience. And talking about some of the things I talk about, like on that last video, The Razor's Edge, I highly recommend you watch that if you haven't watched it already. Today I'm going to talk about friends. And this seems like I've been occupying my time lately, trying to get my mind off of the bullshit in the world and the bullshit with the holidays here, since we're around the seasons. And I can't believe it. They came up with Cyber Monday 2 or 2.0. Talk about ridiculous. Talk about, I don't even want to talk about it. How's that? Let's talk about friends. Friendship. True friendship. Like I was saying, I've been reading a lot of Westerns because that's my favorite thing to read, and I'm writing a book. That's a Western novel to follow up on my other 3 books. And sometimes I watch classic movies that I consider classic movies. And one of the movies that I consider classic in the Western genre is Lonesome Dove with Gus and Woodrow Call. That's a great movie. Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones. And then there was the great actor Robert Urich, who's no longer with us. And all kinds of people are in that movie. But anyway, the movie's based on a true friendship between Texas Rangers who basically use each other as a foil. Gus is more lighthearted and always joking around and giving people a hard time, and Woodrow's more, stiff-necked, in the saddle, afraid to show his emotions, afraid to admit he's human. And Gus just gives him a hard time about it all the time and tries to talk to him about it. And they have their friendly arguments, but basically they're not really arguments. They're kind of jousting with one another with that underlying feeling of true camaraderie, true friendship, where they would basically do anything for one another. They have each other's back, basically, is what I'm talking about here. Just like I talked about in my last video about having your own back and having other people's backs that you call your friends, and making friends in the first place, since this whole world that we live in is void of friendship, void of commitment, void of any kind of understanding, except for the very few kindred. And I want to emphasize that the first syllable of that word, kin, is like family. Kindred, meaning family-like, I suppose. I don't look these things up in the dictionary. I make up my own meanings. But that to me is what kindred means. It means like kin, like family, like like family that cares, okay? Because in the Old West, or in the old days, family was a unit that cared for the most part, and then we had the disintegration of the family unit, or we all saw that happen. We all commented about, the family cell, or the family unit disintegrating, people becoming complete strangers in their own family, not really caring about their siblings, or caring about their son or daughter, or caring about their mother and father. That happens. So getting back to the movie, this Lonesome Dove, which is, again, if you haven't seen that mini-series, it's not really a movie, it's a mini-series. It's available on Amazon. I highly recommend that you rent that movie or buy it or whatever. I bought it. Isn't that much in the scheme of things. And then there's the prequel, Comanche Moon, when they're younger, Texas Rangers. And then there's the sequel, which is got John Voight as McCall, or Call, Woodrow Call. But then Gus has left the scene, and in Lonesome Dove, Gus dies, and he gets shot. I probably shouldn't have told you that if you're going to rent the movie, but you're going to find out anyway at some point. Sorry about that. But anyway, I have to say that to make my point. Hell, you might not even need to rent the movie after I get done here. Anyway, he gets into a situation where he gets attacked by Indians, and he gets shot in the leg with arrows, and he barely makes it to Miles City, which is nearby, and he's got what do they call it? The poisoning in the leg from the wound going bad, and the doctor takes his leg off while he's asleep. And when he finds out, when he wakes up the next day, he realizes that his leg's gone, and the doctor's saying, I got to take the other leg, and he pulls out his gun, points it at the doctor's forehead, and says, if you'd have had to take that other leg off, if you would have taken it off, I'd kill you. I'd put a bullet in your brain, and you're not taking it off. And the doctor says, I have to take it off, because if I don't, you're going to die. And he goes, well, so be it. So anyway, his good friend Woodrow is out hunting for him, and he tracks him down to the Miles City, laying in this bed in the doctor's office, dying. And he tries to convince Gus, to have his other leg removed. And he goes, what do you need that other leg for anyway? And Gus says, well, I might want to kick a pig once in a while. And he goes, besides that, I got my vanity. I like to. And Woodrow goes, oh, you and your vanity, you and your vanity. I mean, it's a great scene. And then he writes his 2 letters to the 2 women that love him. One's a whore, and one's already been married, who was a childhood sweetheart, but they never got together. So he's got two women crying over him after he goes. And after he goes, or as he's going, he's like 3,000 miles away from Texas. And he goes, Woodrow, I'd like you to do one thing for me. I'd like you to promise me one thing. And Woodrow goes, oh, what is it? And he goes, what do you want, a fancy funeral or something? And he goes, no, I want you to take me back to that little orchard down by Houston and bury me there. And he goes, why way back there? Claire is in Nebraska, his former sweetheart. I could bring you there. She's got a nice little plot there. And he goes, I ain't going to be laying next to no horse trader that she married, because evidently he was ready to go too. Larry McMurtry writes some cheerful stuff, doesn't he? Anyway, it's a great, great series, and it doesn't matter if I told you the whole thing. You should watch it anyway, because it's the nuances in the whole thing. That Danny Glover's in it too. He's young. They're all young. I can't believe how old that movie is. I don't even want to talk about it. Seems like I just saw it yesterday. But anyway, Gus leaves the scene, and they store him away for the winter in a shed, or what do they call those things back then? Where they kept the salt pork and the meat. It escapes me right now. Some kind of a locker, storage, smoke shed, I guess is what it is. Smokehouse. He waits till, he can take him back to that little orchard, and he always keeps his promise. Call is the kind of guy that he would never break a promise, never break a promise to his best friend. And all the time that this is happening, tears are just flowing. And here's a hardcore guy that will beat the shit out of anybody that touches his son or touches any of his ranch hands, his trail hands. He's a tough son of a bitch. And he fought Comanches, and he did all this stuff. Incidentally, Gus says, I don't hold anything against those Indians. He goes, it's their land. And he had said earlier that, what is this land going to be now that we've cleaned it up? They're going to put us away next. He goes, all the color of the land is gone. It's a great movie. Anyway, so Woodrow's just bawling his eyes out. Here's this grown man, and it's like, wow, that made me feel better, because I do that often. I cry my eyes out over things. I'm a very emotional, sensitive, but it really showed the human side of him. And so he loads him up in this old wooden pine box and puts it on the back of a wagon and starts his journey. And as he journeys back, he has to stop where the two ladies are, because they're living together in Nebraska, and he gives them the letters. And I mean, they just read him the riot act, one of them does, and calls him the lowest thing on earth. And why are you doing this? You could leave him here. And he goes, I tried to tell him that, but he just wouldn't have it. He just wants to be back in that little orchard where you and him went on that picnic. And she goes, you are the most despicable man, and you just read him up one side, and you're always going to be despicable, and I never liked you, and just said the most shattering things. And he just held his hat in his hand and said, well, I made a promise, and when I make a promise, I don't break it. And he ended up leaving there and going through rivers, and the pine box breaking up, and him having to swim after the wrapped up Gus as he floated down. and put him back, and he finally put him on one of those things that drag behind a horse. Man, I can't remember anything today. I'll get to it, but those things, you know, starts with a T. It'll come to me later after I finish the video. Where you carry people behind a horse and you drag them on the ground. So he drags them all the way through brambles and brush, and he's just a mess. He's just a sweaty mess when he gets them to where he's going to bury them. And he puts them in the ground, and he says his hair's all disheveled, and he's been through hell, and he finally gets them in the ground, and he goes, well, I'll tell you one thing he taught me is I'll be very careful about what I promise from now on, because I always get myself in trouble like this when I promise something and got to keep my word. But here you are, and I'm glad that I could do this for you and that you're in the ground, something to that effect. And his tears are just running down his cheeks. Here's this man again that didn't show too much emotion to people, especially crying. Okay, just wasn't in his nature to show that or to show any kind of affection, hardly. But here he was with this dear friend that he would do anything for, and he did it. And they wrote stories about him, and the newspapers followed him all across the land, and kids beat on the pine boxes. He was going through the territory, and he took all kinds of shit for being a faithful friend. What does this have to do with anything? Well, it has to do with, man, this is the kind of friendship that we need today. And you know, this was based on a true story. It was the story of Charles Goodnight, who was one of the greatest. Google it and look it up on Wikipedia. Charles Goodnight was a cowboy who established many ranches and trails in the West. I think he was from Texas. And he had a buddy that was just like in the movie called Oliver Loving, I think his name was, and he died, and he did the same thing. That's where Larry McMurtry, I believe that's the name of the author, McMurtry, got the idea to write this book, Lonesome Dove. And Lonesome Dove is a little town on the Texas border. And they drove, all the trouble started when they drove a cattle herd and horse herd all the way from the Texas-Mexican border clear to Montana to supposedly paradise. But the whole drift of this video is how important friendship is. And how important, and it doesn't matter what other people think or what, you know, how they might judge you harshly for being with somebody or supporting somebody or having somebody's back. None of that shit really matters if you're a friend, because friendship goes beyond all kinds of bounds. It's a true kindred connection. And we should have that connection with people. We should try to have as much of that kind of connection as we can with different people in our lives who are there for us at different times. And we should have that connection with our family. Kindred. Because if it's anything that I consider sad or really sad, is the fact that a lot of families are against each other or separated or at loggerheads with one another. It's an old term. And they butt heads and they argue about the most insignificant bullshit, and they take offense, and there's sibling rivalry, and you find this, you find that since the breakdown of the family, that these kind of things happen more and more and more. It's a rare thing that families stick together, and I can attest to this firsthand, because, and I'm not looking for sympathy here or anything. I have one son that is the dutiful son, my firstborn, that will love me till I'm not walking this earth anymore, and would do anything for me, and is true kin, but he's a friend. Okay, we were always friends. We weren't just father and son, we were friends. And we always had each other's back, and when he got in trouble, I had his back, and when I get in trouble, or when I'm down, he's there for me. Now I have two other children that disown me, a daughter and a son, and for religious reasons, okay, misguided, let's put it this way, they're severely misguided as to what being what they profess to be is, okay. And they look at me because I think outside the envelope, and I do not put myself in any kind of religious box or belief system. They look at me as scary. They look at me as I don't know, to be truthful with you, I haven't seen them in so long, I don't know what they look at me as. All I know is that when you are disowned by a son and a daughter for religious reasons, and they never speak to you again, then it's like they're no longer here on this earth. It's as bad as them, dying and you never straighten things out with them. And for all they know, I could not be here anymore, and for all I know, I got grandchildren, or they couldn't even be here anymore. I don't know. And when you go through things like this, you tear up and you cry, and if you think about it, but then you think about all the people out there that aren't even family. They're not even family, and they're friends. They have your back. They care about you. They write you beautiful things. And so go figure. It doesn't have anything to do with blood, although it should. Blood kin should be close, but it's not about blood in a kindred relationship, and a friendship, and a romantic relationship isn't necessarily about man and wife, okay, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or whatever. All of that is transcended when you get to that realm of caring and loving and kindredship. Okay, we should all be holding hands and supporting one another and hugging one another in a physical and spiritual way. And we don't see that on the earth today. We see quite the opposite. We see people not caring, a cold attitude, not caring about the people with the gray hairs on their head, the elderly, and not caring about the people that go to war and fight these wars that they don't know why they're fighting, but they're fighting for you, supposedly, and your freedoms, but really they're not, but they think they are, and they're forgotten. And then we got this BS. I think the thing that's bringing all this stuff up is we got all this BS with the holidays and how everything is just, everybody gets heartfelt around the holidays and wants to give around the holidays. That's bullshit. This should be every day, people. Thanksgiving should be thanks every day to the creator of this universe, to the spirit that moves in all things. Giving should be every day in every way. Giving everything you have. Love, support, raising people's spirits, giving them things when they ask for it and they need it, not questioning it. Giving support, money, physical support, spiritual, anything. Taking them in under your roof if you have to. This is how it should be. And treating people like God is coming through you, like the Creator is coming through you, and nourishing. That's what it's all about. That's what my last video is about. You having your own back, but also having other people's back. Being that God that they so dearly want to have faith in and be supported by, having that God essence flow through you to them. Channel it to them. Reach out to them. And that's its own reward, even if they don't do anything back. It's the reward is reaching out and knowing that you did. And it's hard to do that because we're not used to giving of ourselves. We're not used to reaching out. We're not used to breaking down and crying over our relationships and friends. Tears of joy sometimes are just tears of unbelievability. So enjoy your friends and your camaraderie and all that stuff while they're here, so that they'll live in your heart forever when they're gone. Okay? So that they'll live on, and like one of the women, the whore that Gus loved, after he left the scene, she had quit becoming a whore and she was on her way to straightening her life out, supposedly, but she cried on his pine box with her head laying on it, saying, "I'll love you, I'll never forget you, others will forget you. I won't forget you, Gus. I'll remember you every morning and every evening." That's what true friendship and love is. Not forgetting, that person living in your heart forever. Whether they're there or not, their spirit is there. So, hold on to your friendships now. Treasure them. Cherish them. Just, relish and enjoy and embrace the true friendships that you have, even if it's only one. And pay attention to that, not all the other mundane bullshit that's in the world that's trying to drag you down to a lower level. And that's what's wrong with the world today. The wisdom is gone, the love is gone, the kindredship is gone. The connection of sitting around with those who you enjoy and can lift your spirits is gone. Loneliness abounds in all kinds of different ways. So we need to remedy that, people, and we need to think about this. Friendship, what is it? It's kindred feelings of being one and having each other's back and being a family, the family that maybe you have or didn't have. So let's get with it here. And that's why I formed the Campfire Council, which I hardly talk about, which there's links below. That's why I formed that, and that's why at one time I had donations coming in, and at one time I was perpetuating that. But it just, people aren't interested enough. They're too hung up in their everyday life. And I wanted to get out on the road and talk to people personally and play the Native American flute and do things. And it just, because of the hardships involved and the money involved and the corporate bullshit, it's hard for a shaman, a wise man, to get out on the road anymore. And the older you get, the harder it gets. So I do it this way. And there's a bunch of videos. And I really hate doing it this way, to be truthful with you. I'd rather be one-on-one with people and talk to them face to face and have a kindred group of people that get together and have some land and sit around a campfire and have a log cabin or whatever. And live like a tribe. Because that's the ideal of, in my mind, is getting back to that traditional indigenous way of living as an Indian, as an indigenous person, as a tribal person, as a person of the earth, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't make any difference whether you're white, black, yellow, because the spirit of the four directions are white, black, yellow, and red. And grandmother and grandfather, it encompasses everything. As all great medicine men know. So anyway, I'll leave it there today. Vaya con Dios and adios from Wakia. It is Wakia. Let's use that name. It's a transitory name. Sometimes, I said before, it means thunder, which a lot of people know me by. But let's use Wakia because I feel like it's time to transition to that Lakota name. And because I have strong feelings for those people and for that whole concept. And the name is just great. Wakia. So you can call me Wakia from now on. And until we talk again, I'm out of here. Vaya con Dios, amigos and amigas. Adios.